Hello, everybody that's joining. We're letting people have some time to get in, but we will get promptly started in just a few minutes. Well, it's about 11:02, and there might be a few other people that will join us, but Denise, shall we get started?
Sure.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar that is going to be able to describe to you as far as EGrAMS from end to end, how you sign in, what that looks like to utilize the system. We're so pleased to have a representative that is here that is very much of an expert to know how to help you present that and know what that information will be. But first, I want to draw your attention to over in the chat that we have additional webinars about the grant process itself. Some people may not have been able to join yesterday, and so we have added 2 different webinars just because of the interest. And so one will be this afternoon at 4 o'clock, and another one will be at 10 o'clock on Monday morning. So feel free to look in the chat. The webinar links are right there provided for you. And so we appreciate your interest. And then also, I'll ask Denise to make sure that she also posts the email address for questions that people have as they think about things as we go forward. So all of that will be located in your chat. Some housekeeping items. What we're going to do is ask you to please, if you have questions, that you will list those in the chat, and then we'll pause at different times, and then we will be looking through the chat and trying to group together the questions. If every one of your questions does not get answered, please do not worry. We'll look for some of those to be putting in the FAQ, and we'll make sure that your individual answers come to you as well. So again, my name is Gina Holmes. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Community Service Commission. As you know, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity is overseeing this grant process. The Michigan Community Service Commission is part of LEO, and as a result, we are the entity providing the support to launch the grant and throughout the process. So again, I want to welcome Joseph Rodriguez to this presentation today. I have worked with Joseph in this process, and he is incredibly knowledgeable and very patient and kind. So appreciative for him to start with the presentation today and also be there to support you throughout the process. Feel free, if you'd like to go ahead and say good morning in the chat so that we know that you're here. And again, as you get going, please make sure that you post your questions. So Joseph, I turn it over to you at this time.
Thanks, Gina, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on EGrAMS. So basically, what we're going to do today is this presentation is divided into two parts. One is more like an introduction to get an understanding of how to be using EGrAMS, what you need to do before you can start with your application process. And the second part will be how you enter your grant application and how you submit your grant application. So with that said, let's go ahead and start with the presentation. Okay. So can everybody see my screen? I presume
Yes, we
yes.
can. Yes, we
Oh,
can, Joseph.
so okay. So well, EGrAMS is a web-based system. It's fairly easy to use, provided you follow the instructions that are there. So this webinar is basically to help you how to navigate through the system. You know, every electronic system has got its own nuances and controls, and different things mean different things. So, you know, this introduction is just to let you know in EGrAMS how things are interpreted and what you need to do and what buttons you need to click and things like that, so that you know your experience in filling out your grant application is going to be a lot easier. So the first thing is, let's go back here. So the first thing is EGrAMS, where to go. This is the URL for the EGrAMS Leo site. Now, EGrAMS is with MIDC, with MDHHS. So make sure that when you're doing anything, you go to egrams-mi.com/Leo, because that is the website where you're going to fill out your grant application. That's where you're going to register your agency profile as well as create your user profile. Now, every user, you know, has to have a username and a password to access the system. Also, before they can do that, they need to have their organization registered. Now, if there are 10 people in the organization who are going to be working on this grant, 10 people don't have to register the organization 10 times. You register your organization only one time. Also, if you've registered your organization previously for the MI Impact Grant Program and you're applying for this program as well, you don't have to register your organization again. Also, if you already have a user profile that you created when you applied for the MI Impact Grant Program, you do not have to create your user profile again. You can use the same profile and start with your application. So with that said, what we are looking at is we are looking at the notations. What are the notations that are used in EGrAMS? How you search for grant opportunities, how you would register your organization, how you create a user profile, and then how you log into the system and how do you access the various menus and options. So those are the things we're going to cover in the first segment of the training. So all screens, they've got, you know, comments, they have a brief description as to tell you what should be entered. Many fields will also support lookups, which means that instead of you entering the information, you can just click a lookup and then, you know, select the value, which will automatically drop into the field. Also, the system validates all information that you entered. So when you enter information, if something is not right, it's going to give you a message saying that some information is not correct. Also, when you look at a screen, you will see that there may be many pieces of information that are collected on the screen. Some would be mandatory and some are optional. So anytime you see a prefix on the field with an asterisk, that means that field is mandatory. So when you're entering any information, if you see that something is not mandatory, you can leave it blank if you don't have that information. But if it is marked with asterisks, you need to make sure that you enter that information. So now with that said, I'm going to log into the system. And this is how the homepage looks like. Make sure when you log in, you see the Leo logo here onto the left-hand side. That way you know you're in the right website. Okay. So yeah. you have these self-service options. So before you actually access the system, without having a username, there are a few things that you can do. You can register your organization, create your user profile, as well as search for grant opportunities. So what I was mentioning to you, that this is an example of the create user profile screen, and you will see what are the fields that are mandatory. So anything that is marked with an asterisk, those are the fields that are mandatory. The second thing I mentioned about lookups. So anytime a field has this notation here with these three horizontal lines, that means it's a lookup, which means you cannot type in the value directly. You'll have to invoke a lookup. So when you invoke a lookup, the system displays a list of available values, and you would select whatever is most appropriate for that particular field. Another thing is when you invoke lookup, sometimes a lot of values are going to show up there. So rather than you having to scroll, by default, it's always going to list the description in the ascending order of the description. So rather than you having to scroll through a long list, if you already know what is the keyword, you can just put a keyword there, and you can just put a few characters to apply like a filter and reduce the number of results that are there on your screen. And you can use wildcards. The wildcard is a percentage. So if you do a H percentage, it means it's going to show you everything that starts with an H. Okay. Now you can also do a prefix, and let's say we did communications. We didn't even type the whole word. We just did a percentage and a percentage after the word. So which means that any description with that particular search criteria, it will bring up everything. So you can prefix a percentage, suffix a percentage, but it makes your search a lot easier. And then once you have done your search, then you just pick up the value as desired. So if I did percentage home percentage, you get these two values. And to select the right value, you would just go to the select and click on that orange checkbox, and it will automatically return the value here. So this is on how you use lookups. So there are different types of lookups. What I showed you just now, that is a single value return lookup. That means when you select, you can only select one value, and that will be returned to the main screen. Some cases we've got multiple value returns. So in this lookup, you will see that there are multiple values, and you can select all of them at one time and click on OK. It will return all to the main screen. So this is another way of using the lookups. The third type of lookup is the date lookup. Many times we need to type in a date. So rather than typing in the date, you can just invoke the calendar lookup, and the notation for a calendar lookup is just this calendar icon. So if you click on that, it's going to bring up the date. And then if you want to navigate, clicking the left and right is going to take you to the next month or the previous month. Now, if you want to go to a previous year, just click on the month on top, and that will bring you the year. And then you can just do the left or the right to go to the right year, click the desired month, and then select the date. So this is a way how you would use the calendar lookup. Another type of lookups is a drop-down. Now, drop-downs are normally used when there are very few values for selection. So you just click on that down arrow and select whatever is required. Now, whenever you do any action, there are two types of messages that the system displays. One is called a confirmational message, and one is an informational message. Now, in both the cases, you have to provide an acknowledgement. Now, the difference between a confirmational message and an informational message is that in a confirmational message, it will always ask you a question, and it either will perform an action or not perform an action. So here it's asking, do you want to save the information? Yes or no. If I say no, it's not going to perform that action. If I say yes, it's going to do that action. And once some action is completed, it's always going to give you an informational message saying that something has been done. So you have to acknowledge that message by clicking on the OK before you can proceed. So these are some common controls that are used throughout the application. So, you'll encounter them in different places when you go to different options, you'll encounter these messages. But the usage across the system is the same. The behavior is going to be the same. So as long as you understand the difference, how you invoke a lookup, how you respond to a message, it is all consistent across the system. So like I mentioned, there are some self-serve options, and there's also an option to search what are the available grants here. So here I'm showing you the MI Impact grant. Now you would see the community grant. So if I just click on this hamburger menu here and say, show me the current grants, it will show me the current grant that is there. And if I click on the additional info, it's going to give me a brief synopsis of the program. It's going to tell me when the RFP was published, who are the primary contacts on this particular grant, the email as well as the phone number. And then if you click on the additional info tab, it's going to give you the CFDA number, what is the funding, it's federally funded, and who is eligible to apply for this particular grant. Now, different programs are going to have different eligibility. So when you create your organization, you make sure that you select the right organization type, because that determines your eligibility to apply for any grant program. So on this grant, only nonprofits are allowed, and the two different types of nonprofits. And then if there are any technical assistance sessions, it's going to show you what are the technical assistance sessions that are available. And if there is a URL, you click on the online applicability, and that will show you the URL for the technical assistance session or webinar. Also, many times, each program will share some documentation related to the program. So if you click on user documents, you will see what is the documentation that's available. So if you click on grant guidance, it's going to bring up the document related to that specific grant program. So now let's see how you register your organization, how you create your organization. So the first thing is, if you're not sure whether your organization is already existing, you can just, click on this verify your agency registration and see if your organization is already there. So you can just put in some small phrase, prefix it and suffix it with a percentage sign and do a lookup. It should show you if your organization is there or no. So I said profit, and it brought up this particular organization, but this is not my organization. So I'll go ahead and create my organization now. So the information required is fairly simple and straightforward. You just type in all the information as applicable. Now, what's really important on this screen is that your agency type, because this is what will determine your eligibility for your organization. Okay, so once you select that, click on contacts. Who are the main contacts in your organization? And then others is what are the counties that you serve? So I selected 2 counties and mark one as which is my primary county. Now on the right-hand side, you can see a block here, but it is all disabled, which means that you don't have to enter any information. So once you have done this, click on OK. Make sure that you always click on OK, because you fill out the information, you don't click on OK, your agency is not going to be registered. So click on OK. And when you click on OK, it's going to tell you that records were successfully added. That means you have registered your organization within the EGrAMS Leo system. Acknowledge this message. The next step is creating your user profile. So if your organization is already registered, you don't have to do the register your agency. Also, if your user profile is already registered, you don't have to create another user profile as well. So now let's go and create a user profile. Give it whatever username you want. Give yourself a password. Put in your full name, first name, last name. The most important thing here is all of you are applying for a grant. So when it comes to role, make sure that you select grantee as your role and not any other role. Also make sure that when you're selecting your agency, before you go to select your parent agency, that you have set a role. If your role is blank, it will not show you anything in the parent agency lookup. Also, if you select grantor here, you're not going to see your agency. You will only see the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. So make sure you select grantee as your role, and then you select your organization. And by default, it's going to put the same address as your organization. If you need to change it, you can change that. And then put in your telephone number and your email address. Now, email is really important because all communication in EGrAMS is done through an email. So whenever any action you have submitted, and whenever you've submitted your application or you've created a user profile, the system sends out emails automatically to that email address. And then once you have completed the first page, click on the additional info, select your job title, then select your county, and then select your security question. Now, this is really important. If you have forgotten your password, the only way to reset your password is by responding to the security questions. Now, there are two security questions. You give whatever is the answer that you want, but make sure that you remember the answer that you give for your security questions. So out of the two, only one is mandatory. So make sure that you do at least one, otherwise the system won't allow you to register your user profile. So once you have filled out all the information, click on OK. And now it tells you that your user profile has been created, and you can log in once your status is activated. Normally, once you create your user profile, within 24 hours, you should receive the email that your account has been activated.
Joseph, there are a few questions before we move on, if we
Sure.
could, about the profile.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions that have come in. One is asking about, because it's asking for a federal ID number and also UEI. And so also, what is the difference between a federal ID and an EIN? So can you identify the different types of numbers that you have listed there and what they are?
Sure. Let's go back to that screen. I think that was in the agency profile. Okay. So federal ID is basically all federal grants. All organizations who apply for federal grants have to have a federal ID. So this is the FIN number, as you call it. So whatever is the organization FIN number, that is what you would enter here. Now, I think starting April 1st, 2022, if you're applying for a federal grant, you have to have a unique entity identifier. So earlier they had a SAMS code, so they replaced SAMS code with the unique entity identifier, and that's called UEI. So if you have not registered, make sure you register, because to be eligible to receive a federal grant, you have to have a valid UEI number. Okay. And then vendor reference, this is your Sigma ID. So this is basically used if you are awarded all transactions are paid out through Sigma, so we would need that vendor reference. So you can even update. So unique identifier, vendor reference, when you're creating your profile, it's not mandatory, but if you are awarded that grant, you would need to have this information.
So Joseph, just to be clear, they can create their profile, and if they do not yet have the UEI number, sorry, through SAMS, they can do that later and continue with the profile in the grant, correct?
That's correct, yeah. So if you
Okay.
see here, see what is mandatory is the federal ID, address, city, state, and your agency type. So if they don't have this information, they can leave it blank and update it later if they are awarded.
And so just to be clear for everyone, by the time you submit your application, that will need to be there. So we do highly recommend, as you know, that if you were in the webinar yesterday, we ask you to make sure you go through the SAMS registration process and all the other federal entity addresses, as well as the state needs, to make sure that you're not caught at the end. So it's just something to do. There is another question that came in that was asking if you are a contractor or a consultant, should you still select that you're a grantee? And I would say if you are the representative body that is filling out the grant for this grant, then you are the grantee and you should designate yourself, as you said, as a consultant, but you are still representing the grantee. And make sure that if you are designated, though, to sign off on that, that would be the only thing we can talk about in the future. If any of the rest of you are doing this for an organization, you need to make sure that typically the consultant is not who should be signing off for the organization. You're just implementing information for them. There was one other question, Jason, that came in, and they're saying that they're actually looking in EGrAMS right now, and they're trying to register step by step as you go through the instructions.
Mhm.
In the upper left-hand corner, they see MDHHS. They do not see Leo.
So that
So is
means,
there a way to get to Leo?
okay, so which means that they have selected the incorrect URL. I think I made that very clear at the start that make sure what is your https://egrams.mi.com/Leo. That should be the website. I think what they have selected is, see this, I think here your end here is MDDHS. That's why you've gone to the incorrect website. Make sure that this is Leo. egrams-mi.com/Leo.
And it may be because you have entered or done something with DHHS in the past, and that might be why it's coming up. So again, just take that and change it up above. The other thing, just really quickly too, people are asking questions about how they check boxes of locations. So if you are applying and your address where you're applying in your organizational body, remember when you apply as a grantee, even though you have services in multiple locations, we would like to have you list your address of where you are. I do see that someone is saying that their address, physical address, will be moved in January of next year. I say go ahead and put it is now, and then what we'll be doing is working with you if your address changes in the future. I think I'm trying to figure out if I've, Denise, do you see any other questions here that need to be answered at this time?
Nope, I know that there's been a couple questions about recordings for various webinars, and all of the webinars are being recorded. And there was an informational webinar that was recorded yesterday and is available at the Community Center Grant website. I've put that in the chat. And we also have, as Jenna mentioned at the beginning, we also have 2 additional webinars scheduled, informational webinars, and the link for those has been put in the chat and is also available on the Community Center Grant website.
So there's Joseph, there's just a couple other questions. One is for me. It's confirming, let me see, do you need to register in Sigma now? The request would be that you take care of all of that now, yes. It's not a horrible process, but it does take a little bit of time. So I would recommend that you get in Sigma. It's good for you to be there for the future, no matter what happens with this grant process, is my recommendation. Back to a question for you, Joseph, is I believe that we might have made those statements, but I cannot remember, is what are the steps to update the agency profile? I'm assuming that they might already have an agency and they need to update it. So how do they go in and update?
Yeah, so we're just getting to that.
Okay, perfect.
So once you log in, if you need to change your agency information. So here, this is John Doe. Now I'm logging in as John Doe. If I need to change my agency information, I would go to administration. One second, let me go back here. I'll go to administration, agency information. And I would click on a find. Now, if I want to change the information, I will click on edit and then do a find. And let's say I wanted to change the contact. So I go and change the contact name, change the phone, or whatever information you want. And then click on OK. So that's how you would change your agency information. Now, if you want to change your password, you click on change password, put your old password, and then put your new password. Now, make sure that if you want to change your password, that the new password is not the same as the old password. So it has to be different, otherwise it will give you an error. Similarly, if you forgot your password, click on forgot password, put in your username, and just click on tab. The moment you click on tab, it's going to display your security questions, put your security answer there, and then put in your new password and retype in your new password. Again, make sure that if your security answer does not match what you had set up with your, when you created your user profile, the system is not going to allow you to change your password. So make sure that you do that correctly. Okay. So this was just some of the basics of, of the application before you can actually get started. So now let's go and look at the application. And in the handouts, there are also some exercises there. So now what we're going to do is we are going to look at, how you start a new application, how you assign users, and how you go through the application entry. So now I'm actually going to go through the actual application that we have here. Okay, so I'm going to log in as John Doe. So the moment I log in, it's going to, show me what organization I belong to and show me my name. Now, these are basically menus which tell you, where to go and things like that. So the first step that you would do is you would start a new application. So you would go to project director. And, before I actually even do that, there are some training handouts that we have uploaded. So you can either look at training materials, or even in current grants, if you go. And if you go to user documents, there is the EGrAMS overview and the EGrAMS application entry and submission. So these are good resources for you to, go through and make sure that, you follow that, because all the step-by-step instructions are mentioned there. Or you can go to training materials and you'll see those same two PDFs that are there. So whatever is convenient for you, you can download those documents as well. So now I'm going to log in as John Doe.
Jason, could you go back to what you had on that screen of showing the forms that had the different documents? Do you remember where that was?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So we went to current grants,
Okay.
info, and user documents.
Okay. So when you look at that, there is the one, if you look through there, there's a certification form, there the site control form. So the capital grant people, remember if you were on yesterday, or if you will be looking at our webinar in the future, There's a site control form, and there's some other types of forms that we will be listing here, as well as they will be available to you on our website. We want to make sure that they're available in both locations. I just wanted to make sure I called your attention to that. Thank you, Chase. Thank you, Joseph.
No problem. So I'm going to log in now as John Doe. So the first step is you'll access the menu. So primarily what you're going to be doing is, if you want to change your agency, so that you would go under administration, go here. Now to start a grant, first thing you would go to project director, start a new application. You would click on add, select the program. Now it's only going to allow you one application. So John Doe has already created an application, so it won't allow him to create the application. So I'll go to edit mode and just do a find. Okay. So when you create on add, select the program. By default, it's going to put a project title here. And the project title it's just going to repeat the same program name. But I would recommend that whatever is your project, give it a meaningful name so that, you can identify just from the title, what is this test application, whatever this project is related to. So once you have created your project, the next thing is you can straight go ahead and start editing your application. But many times, if there are multiple people who are going to be working on this application, you can grant them access, because whoever creates the application for that organization, he or she becomes the owner of that application, and only they have access to that application. So you may have a user profile. Your user profile may be active, but you will not be able to access that grant unless the person who created the grant application gives you access to that application. So let's see how you assign people from your organization to that application. So for that, you would go to project director, assign agency users. So by default, it shows you the program, it shows you your agency, just click on find, and it will show you all the users who have registered within your organization. So there is Jane Smith, there's John Doe, so he's the owner. So Jack Daniels is also there, so let's assign him some permission. Now let's click on, we'll make him the authorized official. So when somebody is assigned to an application, by default, they have access to all the content within the application. Now, if you want to restrict any access, that means you want to give somebody only read access or only write access, you can do that by clicking the applicability checkbox and then click on the category. So this shows you all the tabs that are there for this application. So you can say that this is a read, this is a read, this is a write, and this is no access, and these are write. Let's just say this is what we do. Okay. This is for Jack Daniels. So that means now we have restricted his access to some of the sections. Okay. So you can do this at any time. It doesn't have to be right when you're creating the application. You can come back later, because if somebody has not created a user profile, you cannot assign them to the application. So you can do it at any time. So once you have done that, let's go and see how to enter and edit our application. So you go to grant application, enter edit application. So by default, it's going to show your application, what are the applications that are there, and it's going to show it in your queue here. Just click on this link. The first thing it's going to show you is what is the submission deadline. So it's 8:31, 5 p.m. So make sure that you get your application, ahead of time. Also, each time you enter information in your application, the system keeps track of where you stopped the last time. And each time you go back into the application, it's going to ask you whether you want to continue from where you left or you want to start from the beginning. So I'll just say no. So I'll go right from the beginning. Now here, one thing to note is that by default, the system is going to put the information here from your organization profile. And it shows you what is your organization type. Now, if you change this, when you validate your application, you're going to get an error. So make sure that this ties up with whatever you set up in your agency profile. If you change it here, make sure you change it in your agency profile as well. Otherwise, you're going to get an error. So before we can look at all the other areas of the application, in a paper application, you've got various sections. So here, the sections are denoted as tabs. So here you've got applicants, you've got demographics, you've got eligibility status. So clicking on any tab will take you to the first page of that tab. And when you look at an application within a tab or within a section, there are going to be multiple questions. So, you can navigate, going previous and next. This is one way to navigate, but within the organization capacity, if you want to see how many pages are there, you can just do a show tree, and you'll see that there are so many different pages within that. So there is, under organization capacity, there's organization background, there's compliance and accountability. And within organization background, again, there are another 5 pages. So if you wanted to go to grant management straight, just click on this and say, okay, it's going to take you straight to that particular page. Okay, so this is how you navigate these various sections. And this is scrolling through the various sections. You can see there are several sections here. And there is also an index page. Index page is nothing but a table of contents. And this just shows you the various pages that are there, what is completed, what is still blank. So this is the table of content. So also from the index, if I were to click on this, it will take me straight to that particular page. So that's looking at these tabs right on top, or sections. Now let's look at what we have. What are these controls here on the second page? On the second line, sorry. So here you've got save, save and next, validate, errors, done, view PDF, copy, delete. So what save does is it will save the information and keep you on the same page. Save and next is going to save your information and take you on to the next page. If you click on validate, it's going to validate whatever section you are on. So here we are on demographics. So if I click on validate, it's only going to validate that particular section. If there are any errors, I will see what are the errors here. So let's click on validate, and we see that there are errors. So it says details for congressional districts were not selected. So if we click on that error, it will take us straight to that erroneous spot. So I'll click this one and I'll say save. And now if we run the validator again, we have no errors. Now you don't have to run the validator for every page and before you move from one section to another. You can just validate your application when you think you are done. Now, the difference between validate and done is done is going to validate the entire application. So if you feel that you have completed your application, just click on done, and it's going to validate your entire application. So back to applicant here. All the information here is fairly simple, straightforward. And once you understand, how to use these controls, how to navigate, it's fairly simple. Also, you saw on the homepage when we went to current grants, there were some documents. So when you're in the application, if you ever want to refer to them, you don't have to log out, go back to that page. Just click on documents and you'll see the same documents here. So you can always refer to them when you're in the application as well. Okay. So I'm only going to talk about sections that are of importance, because everything is, fairly simple and straightforward. What is this amounts of fund requested and project cost? So this is how much you're requesting for this grant, and project cost is how much you're requesting plus your contribution. So in total, what is the total project cost? You can enter this later as well. You don't have to enter it right at the beginning, but your budget has to tie up with whatever you enter here. Okay, so once you complete your budget, make sure that these two figures tie up, otherwise the system is going to give you an error. The next thing we're going to look at is putting the contact types here. First, you need to select a contact type. So this particular program requires the 4 different contact types. They require a primary contact type, they require a financial controller, they require authorized official, they require a CEO. So these are the 4 different contact types that are required. So once you enter your contact type, if they have a user profile, you can just select this and select their name. If they don't have a user profile, you can just type in their name, and I'll show you that. Now, when you click on save and next, it's going to take you to the next one. So here I put John Smith. Let's go to the next. So here, when you do next, it's going to ask you whether you want to add a new contact. If I say no, it's going to skip to the next section. If I say yes, it's going to take me here. So make sure first thing you do here is you select your contact type. The second thing is if they have a user profile, select it from here. If they don't have a user profile, just do this, and it is going to automatically put in their information here. Make sure you select the address, their title, and put in their what do you call that, email address as well. And then when you click on save and next, it'll ask you want to create a new contact. I'd say no, I'm done with that. So now I move to the next section. Now here, this is just selection, so which means you can select one or more counties here. So there is counties, there are a few things here. There's counties, there's House district, Senate district, and congressional district. So, I mean, all of them are fairly simple. Just make sure whatever House district you belong to, you can just select one or more values from there. And let's move to the eligibility status. So eligibility status, this is just giving you a description. So make sure you read all this information. And as you go down, you'll also see that there is a checkbox here. 1 second. Okay. So make sure you mark this checkbox to acknowledge that you have read this information. If you don't mark this checkbox, it's going to give you an error when you validate your application. Then let's go to the next. Now here, eligibility status. Now here, it just shows you your agency type again. And now this is just read only, which means you cannot change any of the information here. This is coming straight from your organization profile. Now, if you are a 503 nonprofit status, you also have to apply. You have to upload your nonprofit status IRS letter of determination. Now, how do you upload any attachments? There will be attachments across several different sections, but how you attach an attachment is the same. So all attachments are denoted by this up arrow. This is the icon for that. Click on this up arrow, select browse, and then just select whatever file you want. Click on open and click on OK. So once you do that, make sure you click on save. And when you click on save, you'll see that there is a paperclip that comes here. This shows you that your attachment has been saved. And then here, again, these are very simple questions. You have to just respond yes or no. So make sure that, some of these, you have to meet all these 4 criteria. Otherwise, it will tell you, hey, you're not eligible for this grant. So make sure you fill in all that information correctly. Also make sure that when you complete a page, or even if you've not completed a page, make sure that you save information. Now, without saving, if I try to navigate to another page, it's going to tell me, hey, you've made some changes, click yes to save, to continue without saving, or no to return back to the page. So if you don't save, it's always going to give you that warning. So make sure that you save your information before moving to the next page. Okay, and then now this is like a table here. So here it's listing all this criteria. All what you need to do is provide a brief description. Okay, and numbers served, 54. So you'll have to put all this, you'll have to complete this table. Again, click on save and next. Now this is again eligibility status. Sometimes you will see an information icon. So that is just giving you some information, additional information. But this is a drop down, so it's only showing you the valid values that are there. Now, whenever you have information in a table like this, if at all you want to delete some information, don't blank out the information. You have to click on delete, this particular icon here, the delete, and click on save. That is what will delete the row, because if you blank out something, internally in the system, it is storing that row as blanks, and you will get an error later on if you do it that way. So make sure that you always delete something from a table by clicking the del here and then clicking on save. The next thing is, let's look at, okay. Now, there are a lot of textual sections, and the way you enter that information is same. I'm not going to, also you'll see that this is the heading, this is organization history. But below that, you'll see what is expected when you actually enter your organization history. So this is saying, when was your organization created? Describe your mission. So make sure that you address all what is specified here in this question, because when your application is reviewed, the reviewers are going to look at this criteria and make sure that that you have addressed what they are expecting in that particular section. Now, when it comes to entering information in these text boxes here, you can either directly type this information, or if you have it in Word, you can just do a copy and paste. You can just do a copy and paste. Now, some of these may have a character limit. So whenever you go here, you'll see how many characters are there. So if there is a limit, it will tell you you're exceeding that limit. Okay, so I won't go through all these sections because I think all of them are the same. Data and evaluation, correction plan. Also make sure that when these instructions are there, sometimes the space is limited here. So here you can only see, 3 lines, but there is more to it. So make sure that you scroll right down by using the scroll bar here. You make sure that you scroll and address all what is required, because data collection and evaluation plan, they're expecting a lot of information here. So make sure you go through this and address all that is required. The next thing let's look at is, I think all these are text, so I won't go through these. Let's click on this last one. So now this one is actually like a preamble to the capital and program grants. Now, all these sections are, common to whether you're applying for a capital project or a program grant. But here, it's giving you some description here. And it's saying, select your project type. Is it capital project or a program grant? So suppose you were to only select capital, then only this is applicable to you. You don't have to fill in any information here. Okay, so
Joseph,
yes.
I know we've only got about 7 minutes left, so I wanted to kind of get to some of the questions as well. While you're in this section, can you say how people can find out what the character limits are?
So whenever you're in any of these, let's say, text sections, it's going to list what are how many characters you have typed. If there is any character limit, normally in the description, we would say max so many characters. So now this one is unlimited. There is no limits. But in your program, many of your sections had character limits. And we would put it in parentheses. We would say max 4,000 characters, max 3,000 characters, whatever. But whatever you type, you always see how many characters are here. So okay. I think on this particular grant, I don't think there are any character limits set.
Oh, there are no character limits. Okay. And we've got a couple people who shared that the SAM cage code would not save in the system.
Where when they entered?
Yeah, it says, can you advise why the SAM cage code would not save in the system while the other numbers are?
Why don't we do this? If there's problems individually with that, what we'll do is let's make sure we handle that individually with them, because I think there's 2 people that have that. There might be more. So we will help you if there's an issue like that specifically and find out how to address it.
Yeah.
But knowing that we have about 5 minutes left, Joseph, when you think about what else needs to be identified here, is there anything that you would like to say about the budget section, or is there anything else that you think you need to talk about?
Yeah, so I wanted to just say, depending on what they mark here, only those sections are applicable. So now here only capital project is marked. So if I go to project grant, it's going to say based on your proposal type selected, this section is not applicable. So you can skip this. Okay, so we'll go quickly through the capital project. And again, capital project has got a lot of sections. But all of them are pretty much the, what do you call that? They're all text sections here. Now, this one is, about the licensed architect. Again, select yes or no, and just fill in all this information. A lot of it is just text information, but towards the end, I think there is also a capital project budget. So capital project budget, you have to put in the budget here. Now notice that amount of grant requested matching funds, this is grayed out, which means the system automatically maintains that information. So I'm just going to put this as cash and 100,000 here. We'll save this. Okay. So here the budget comprises of several, like, what should I say, subsections. So there is pre-planning, there is permitting and things like, and you will see that each of these have got 5 rows. Now, if you need more than 5 rows, just click on save and automatically it will add additional rows here. I'll just add 1 column. Okay, and if there is any attachment that is required, again, click on this and put in the attachment. Now notice that this total planning here, these 2 are grayed out, which means the system is going to display that information for you. So the moment you click on save, you will see that automatically that total is populated here. Okay, and then at the end of the page, it will show you what is your total capital project. Now, also, if we go to the previous page here, it would have automatically populated this information. So you don't have to do anything here. Whatever you type in your budget, automatically it will populate. Just make sure that your match ties up with this match. Okay. And then if you go to the project budget section, the project budgets are automatically, it will populate this information. So if you applied for program and capital and program, so it will show you that is your capital project and this is your program budget and this is your total budget in all. Okay, so automatically that is done by the system. You don't have to enter anything there. All what you have to do is just enter the budget in the capital budget section. The last thing I want to talk about is certification. Now in certification, let's go back here. Okay. Now certification, you'll see that all this is grayed out, which means that this is system maintained. Now, whoever is the person who marks this checkbox, once you mark this checkbox, you click on save. That's when the system is automatically going to type in your signature and put in your name and when it was signed. And if you're not the CEO of the organization, say yes or no. If no, then you have to upload an attachment of the actual signature of the CEO. So make sure that when you click on this, you click on save, only then this information is displayed. If you don't click on save and you mark the checkbox, nothing is going to be displayed here. And in the last grant, I got a lot of questions that they marked the checkbox, but nothing appeared there and they are not able to enter. So whenever you see something that is grayed out, it is basically system maintained. And normally when something is system maintained, after you perform the action, click on save, and that's when it's going to perform the action of displaying that information. So this is pretty much what I had. We covered the main areas. A lot of it is very similar, just typing in your textual information and things like that. But what I tried to cover here are where people normally have problems. Okay. So any questions so far? And
I'm looking through and I've been trying to answer some of them. Everyone look in the chat, and I've been trying to answer some of your questions that are more programmatic. I think that there is one question on who is authorized. So what we learned from the impact grant, that if we say that the individual of your organization that is the authorized person has to sign off on it and submit it, that became a problem really close to the deadline and the timeline. So what we're allowing this time is that you can submit your grant, whoever is designated as the person that is allowed to submit the grant. It can be the project director or whomever is the main writer of the grant can do so. But there will be a request and requirement for the CEO or authorized person, whoever that is, to be able to sign a form to say that, yes, they support the grant and that they are acknowledged of it and support what's in it. It won't be a requirement before you submit, but it will have to be, I'll give you a reminder within a week's time of your submission that form will have to be in. That will take care of not being caught at the very end and the deadline and the timeline when it gets tight for you. I know we're at the time limit at this time period, but just wanting, if people do want to wait for a couple more minutes and ask any questions. Denise, do you see any other questions that are in that we need to answer right now?
Jenna, this is Shannon. I highlighted a couple if you want me to share those.
Yes, please do.
So one is just to confirm that when you have done your organization registration, do you have to wait for that to be approved before you can then set up individual users?
No, for organization, there is no approval. Once you create your organization, you can straight move on to creating your user profile. Okay.
And can a user, like the initial user, can they invite others to join? Is there a way to like send them an invitation, or do you just have to have them go to EGrAMS and navigate through the registration?
Yeah. So they can just send them an email and then ask them to, register if they want them to be working on that application. So
okay. And one more that I saw, so earlier somebody said they were on the MDHHS EGrAMS site. If somebody is already registered with a different department in EGrAMS, does that registration work in the Leo EGrAMS, or do they have to just
for Leo they have to have their new registration,
a different registration? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there anything else that anyone has right now? Denise, is there anything that you saw? I do know that there's some individual questions that we need to maybe troubleshoot, Joseph, for those individuals that were struggling. So Joseph, if people have questions as we go forward, should they go through our email system and then we direct them to you, or how would you like that to be handled?
Whatever is more convenient. I think what Denise did, she had that MI poverty, something, that email, whatever was there. And then if they sent her an email, she would forward it to me. But another thing is they could also send that email to them and they can CC me. My email is there on the training handouts.
Could we put that in the chat so people see it, Joseph, Denise?
I put it in the chat a couple times that if people have questions related specifically to EGrAMS, you can email the My Center Grants email and copy the EGrAMS team, and all those emails I just put in the chat again.
Perfect. And so those of you that had those specific issues with a number not being accepted, if you could go through that and then work through that with them, let us know if there's anything we need to do to support you as well. Is there anything else? And I'll look right now at the chat. If we're done, Denise, does that sound good to you? We covered most of the questions?
Yes. One last specific question, it might apply to a couple more people, is if the agency is selecting multiple counties, will the appropriate congressional districts auto-populate, or do they manually need to put them all in?
No, they have to manually put it all in.
Yeah, at this point, the system is not connected in that way. That would be lovely if it was. So we apologize that you're going to have to click all those districts as well. So thank you for that. I think that's an important piece. I put it in the chat, but just to make sure everybody hears it, it's still on the line as well. The one question was, is it allowed for you to be able to click both capital and program? If you are intending to have both of those grants and be considered, you will click both to have access, and then you'll be able to fill them out. And again, remember what that will mean is capital grants will be compared to all capital grants. Program grants will be compared to all program grants. But your total as your organization cannot exceed 2.5 million. So if you want to go for 1.5 million for your capital and 2 million for your program, then you exceed that 2.5 million, and that would come up for us as an error. Hopefully that covers that as well. I think that's everything that I have on my end. Please again, remember, and as a reminder, Denise put in the very beginning that there's a webinar. If you were not able to attend it yesterday, there is one this afternoon at 4 o'clock. There's also one at 10 o'clock in the morning on Monday. In addition to that, Jason, our communications person, is posting as far as the webinar recording, so you can actually go at your leisure to choose to do that as well. And then follow up with any questions, and we will begin using the email that has been posted a couple different times directly for this grant process. And we are hoping within 40 hours to respond. But based upon the quantity of the questions that are coming in, it may take us a little bit longer, but we will get to your questions as soon as we possibly can. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate you being on. Thank you, Joseph, for your guidance and your support. We appreciate you joining us, and everyone else for their assistance in this. And again, please continue to let us know if you see something that is not connecting the dots correctly. It may be an error on our end, and then we will make sure that we correct it for everybody, and we'll make sure that the application then is streamlined in the way that's necessary to meet your needs. So thank you again, everybody. Take care, and we look forward to working with you as we go forward.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, bye.